don't know the institutions of Iowa well. I know some of them by reputation. Grinnell, for example, enjoys a wonderful reputation nationally. My sense is that those institutions, because of they tend to have a special niche in this larger enterprise, have been, frankly, quite successful. They have had the capacity to adapt and adjust quickly. They continue to attract large numbers of very good students. I remember reading an article by David Reisman, the Harvard sociologist. I'm going to say this is about 10 years ago, in which he commented that in reviewing American institutions of higher education, that the most vital, the ones that seemed most alive, most successful, were the colleges that were religiously affiliated, that they brought a dimension to the experience of students that created an extraordinarily rich environment. So I think the institutions that you've mentioned, the private, largely teaching, largely undergraduate, liberal arts colleges, contribute richly to this diversity of higher education in our country. And frankly, the good ones have a very secure future, in my view. The last time I looked, Grinnell had a $300 million endowment, so they've got staying power. But more fundamentally, part of the richness of this American system is its diversity. And in a nation of our size and diversity, they appeal to different students, and I think that's healthy. I believe part of what has made the American system of higher education as good as it is this competition. We compete for those students as well, and we have to understand ourselves well in that competition. I don't think that's bad at all, frankly. I think the fact that we aggressively recruit students is a good thing, because it's part of the test of that market. To the extent they come, I believe they perceive we offer rich opportunities. To the extent they don't, demographics aside, it's a signal that perhaps you've got to adjust a little bit. I was pleased to see our enrollment be higher than we had predicted, and I think that's part of it because we're working harder. But this is a real competition. Yes?
I'm enthused about your philosophy between the marriage of research and teaching and sharing that with undergraduates. I work for the honors program, and we set up a certain program for our freshmen, matching them with faculty on campus, do a spring semester worth of research. Needless to say, I don't think that philosophy is widely shared among the university. Granted, these are freshmen, but we think giving them their first taste of research and from finding out what these students give us as feedback, they get turned on by it and they want more.
Sure.
How do you make, or what's the best way to get these researchers to share and take the risk with students? How can we give those students more opportunities?
I haven't had a lot of experience with freshmen in research, but the very best graduate students I ever had, I first brought into my research program as undergraduates. In fact, I would regularly volunteer to teach the first course in fluid dynamics so I could get my hooks into the best students. And there was always one or two in the class that had a sort of spark and interest. Opportunities for research among undergraduates is not for everybody. We've got a large fraction of our students who are working and frankly don't have the time and all they can do to keep up with their regular classwork. But for some, it's a very important experience. It satisfies a desire that many students have for that kind of direct interaction with faculty, search for mentors, and it provides them with, I think, a very enriching educational opportunity to really tackle unstructured problems, to see somebody who is skilled in the art of tackling difficult questions do it, to watch it, to be part of that. And I think it inspires lots of them into graduate school. One of the experiences that I had with these students that I work with is that when it came time for the graduate school decision, we didn't argue about stipends. They were happy to take whatever I could get them. It was interesting to me. So I would argue, first, to make the point to faculty that trying to attract the very best undergraduates into research is in their interest as researchers. It is in their interest as part of this university community. And to the extent that we can find resources to encourage that, I would like to do that. I think that would be a good idea. I must admit, in this current budget environment, it is difficult to find additional resources. You see funding agencies, the National Science Foundation in particular, setting aside money to encourage this kind of thing. I think it's a good idea. And for certain kinds of problems, frankly, my experience as the undergraduates were as good as the graduate students I could find. But I think the most important idea, and the one that I would like to emphasize, is that we must make good this idea of the complementary nature of these three parts of our mission. That defines this kind of university. And if we get drawn into the trap of believing they're not complementary and are antagonistic, then I think we've called into question the kind of university we are. And I happen to believe in this kind of university. I would like to see it work and prosper and really bring forth all of the promise that is here. And one of the issues is our undergraduates want to have some contact with the faculty. To the extent you make those opportunities available more readily, it benefits them and the institution. Yes, sir.
Well, I'm sure that many of us here, your support of the basic concepts of the land-grant institution is encouraging. However, there's one thing in the offing to see, the proposal to cut extension by 12.5%, I believe it is. Doesn't seem to fit well with that concept at this time. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, let me correct you in one sense. It is not a cut of extension, it is a reallocation within extension. Extension's budget is not being cut. The funds that are there are being reallocated within extension. And that is in response to these budget stresses we have all faced. It is the view of the leadership in extension. I haven't reviewed the proposal specifically, so I don't want to comment on them specifically, but it is in part to try to come to grips with the reality of the current level of funding. In taking budget cuts that have come down in the last year or so, some of them have been done in what I will call, of necessity, opportunistic ways. Positions were vacant. It was easy to take the money out there. But it has led to an extension program that is not as well balanced, focused as the leadership in extension believes, and some changes have to be made to accommodate that. Extension is a rich part of the land-grant tradition. Perhaps the unique thing about land-grant universities, this notion of service, of taking the knowledge and the assets that are at the university and sharing them very widely and very broadly. It's had an enormous impact in Iowa. The impact in particular in agriculture is substantial and profound. But the world is changing. The access to information today is much different than it was 100 years ago when we started cooperative extension. The purveyors of that information are more than universities. And what the extension's role in the modern land-grant university, I think, is a subject for serious debate. It is changing. It's changing in terms of the national level and the funding there, and it is changing at the state level. What is going on today in extension, though, is an adjustment to, a reaction to, a dealing with the budget reductions that have taken place previously, and frankly, it's what the whole rest of the university is trying to wrestle with Dean Schrock's task force. How do we accommodate the current level of resources, which is less than it was a year ago? That's the issue. Yes?
Comment that, maybe 15 years ago, there was a British scientist who wrote on research management in the time of fixed budget, and made a comment which is somewhat germane to just what's the investment of the dollar. He said, because under those circumstances, the only way to start something new is to stop something old. And the first requisite for a good research administrator is that it be a good and ruthless butcher.
Here.
The comment with regard to extension, if I understand it correctly, what was the problem is you have fixed resources, and you've got demands to do some new things, so you have to stop slow.
And frankly, for people of my generation, this has not been our experience until recently. I've had some older friends, educators, who have told me that you have been in the golden age, you just don't know. And we are having to accommodate. I believe part of what is happening it's not growing at a rate that allows us to do a lot of new things in addition to what we have been doing. That's one fact of life. And the second one is a kind of reality that it's difficult to get those who have supported us to devote a larger fraction of the existing resources to our enterprise. And third, a world that's changing in which the demands upon us are growing. So the questions of efficiency and choice are real questions, and they're unavoidable, and many people in society, particularly in the private sector, believe they have been through this and have done what the sort of things we're talking about, and it's our turn. I mean, I hear a lot of that outside the university. Sympathy, understanding of the difficulty, wish it weren't the case, but sort of welcome to the 90s, kind of. I mean, I've heard that from people, and these are friends of education. These are not mean-spirited people who do not care about our enterprise. They care deeply about it, but they believe it is in the nature of our time, and we have to adapt to this. Yes?
I hope you'll forgive me changing tack a little bit again from that to something else, but you talked a lot about specialization among faculty and also obviously in students also
Sure.
in specializing in research and things like that. Well, let me back up a second. I know in a lot of the technical majors there are a lot of required courses, there are a lot of credits that are required among a lot of the different technical majors. Is there room, in your opinion, for a core curriculum of many other, a broader base of courses? It seems to me like a lot of students that get into the technical majors at a school like this get so involved in those particular areas, that specific area, that they just do not have the kind of broad education which I think a lot of people thought that people used to get. You know, it wasn't quite as specialized. People would get into philosophy and history and things like that. Do you think that there's a need for a core curriculum? Is there any need for more
It's a very
broad-based
tough question.
education?
I mean, I have some private opinions as a single member of the faculty, and I want to say this precisely. The president does not determine the curriculum, and it's good. I do have opinions. I tend to be one who argues, as a member of an individual faculty, for a broader curriculum. It's part of my own experience, my biases about what are important and what endures. But the most important message is that this is the responsibility of the faculty, and what I am arguing for is to find ways to have that discussion within the faculty. And it is a difficult one. In the nature of our institution, it makes it quite difficult. We are large and complex. We're all extraordinarily busy. But beyond that, the deeper issue is that to do our jobs on a day-to-day basis, we have become very specialized. I know a lot about fluid mechanics. I know less about biology. I know less about history. And the danger in that specialization is that you know so little that you can't even contribute to the debate. You don't know the debate. You don't even know the questions, much less the answers. And I'm arguing for trying to deal with that. It's a difficult thing to do. It takes time and energy. But I believe it is part of the nature of this land-grant university to try to find that balance between a practical and therefore specialized education and a richer, more general or liberal education. Where the balance is varies with time, to be sure. But I'm one that argues that we ought to try to tackle those, and my experience has been, as a participant, that these are extraordinarily difficult to do. It's hard to have a discussion when everybody's speaking a different language or not hearing the questions. It tends to get balkanized and bartered, and out of that comes a hodgepodge, and that's unfortunate. Part of what's neat for me about being at a university is being with a lot of people who have different views of the world, of truth, of beauty, and understand how you solve a lot of different kinds of practical problems. There's a sort of richness in that I enjoy participating in, and I think is an important part of the education we provide students. How to do that is a challenge, and all I'm trying to suggest is we try to find ways to begin the discussion. And you don't want it led by the president, frankly. I don't think that would be good. Because ultimately it's the faculty that has to do it. They're the ones that do the teaching.
Dr. Jeske, I think we better,
One more and then I'll
one
quit.
more? Oh.
No, Nothing worse than an unasked question.
Fine.
Back on the subject of the extension service,
Sure.
with the reallocation, will the mission change in some sense, or what will be some of the?
I wouldn't say the mission would change, but the particular areas in which the mission is played out will. Put superficially, probably be fewer things done. But the notion of extending the university's knowledge to solve problems, to help people make decisions, that will persist. That is the mission, to extend the institution. That will persist. In what areas we will extend it and how, the mechanism, how it is organized, I think, I don't see how it can't change. I mean, start taking money out, real things happen, either intended or not. You can kid yourself that you're continuing to do what you did before, but you've got less dollars, you don't do it. So I don't see it as a change in mission. I see it as a reallocation, reorganization, both for greater efficiency and somewhat more focus. So there are real choices in